You are watching a hallucination. In every movie, the survivors gather. They find an abandoned mall or a farmhouse. They light a roaring fire, and they smile. They have community. They have numbers. They have hope. And because of that, they are already dead. You are looking at a mass grave that hasn't been dug yet. The reality of survival isn't a campfire song. It is a brutal equation of thermodynamics and biology that hates crowds. A group of 30 people is not a safety net. It is a biological reactor waiting to melt down. The fire you see? That's a thermal beacon screaming your coordinates to every predator within 10 miles. The laughter? That's the sound of discipline dying. I am going to tear down the single most dangerous myth in survival mythology. I am going to explain the physics of starvation, the mathematics of contagion, and the psychology of betrayal. By the time this video ends, you will understand why isolation is the only armor that holds, and why your best friend in the apocalypse isn't a crowd, but the silence of an empty room. Stay with me, because the crowd is already starving, and they are looking at you like you are the main course. The Calorie Bankruptcy, Thermodynamic Reality. Let us begin with the absolute cold physics of energy consumption. The human body is a heat engine. It requires fuel to maintain homeostasis, to keep your core at 98.6 degrees, while the world outside tries to pull you down to 0. In a survival scenario, calories are the only currency that matters, and a group is a hyperinflationary economy. When you see 30 people, you see security. I see a caloric black hole. Let's run the numbers that the movies ignore. An active survivor in a cold environment, stressed, moving, building, shivering, burns approximately 3,000 calories a day. Multiply that by 30. That is 90,000 calories required every single day just to maintain 0 equilibrium. That is not thriving, that is barely existing. To visualize this caloric debt, imagine the biological mass required to sustain it. You need to harvest 3 full-sized deer every single day. Not 1 deer a week. 3 every day. Do you understand the energy return on energy invested, or EROEI? It is a physics concept that dictates survival. If you expend 5,000 calories hunting a deer that provides 4,000 calories, you are dying. In a group of 30, you overhunt your immediate radius within 48 hours. The squirrels are gone. The birds are gone. The local fauna has either been consumed or spooked into the next county. Now, your hunters have to travel 5 miles out. That burns more calories. Then 10 miles, more calories. The law of diminishing returns kicks in with brutal efficiency. The further you go to feed the beast, the more the beast hungers. Eventually, the caloric cost of acquiring food exceeds the caloric value of the food itself. This is the moment the group enters a thermodynamic death spiral. You are eating your own muscle mass to walk 10 miles to catch a rabbit that doesn't even cover the walk back. Furthermore, consider the logistical nightmare of distribution. In a solo scenario, you eat what you kill. The transfer of energy is direct. In a group, you introduce the inefficiency of bureaucracy. Who eats first? The hunters? The guards? The sick? Even if you are a saint, the caloric distribution will never be perfectly efficient. Food spoils. Food is dropped. Food is stolen. The entropy of the system increases with every additional mouth. You are not building a civilization. You are building a famine. The land has a carrying capacity, a finite amount of biomass it can yield before it collapses. A swarm of 30 humans strips the land like locusts. Once the immediate radius is stripped, the group must move. But moving 30 people, some weak, some young, some old, is an energy expenditure so massive it often finishes them off. You are anchored to a dead zone, starving by the math of your own making. But starvation is slow. The water will kill you much faster. Next, I will explain why your thirst is a logistical impossibility. The fluid dynamics of collapse. Water is heavy, water is life, and for a group, water is an anchor that will drown you. The rule of threes says you die in 3 days without it. But in a high-stress survival environment, dehydration degrades your cognitive function in hours. Let's look at the fluid dynamics of a 30-person camp. A conservative estimate is 4 liters per person per day for drinking, hygiene, and cooking. That is 120 liters of water daily. That equates to roughly 32 gallons. In weight, that is 265 pounds of liquid that must be sourced, transported, and purified every 24 hours. You are not finding 32 gallons of safe, potable water in a puddle. You are hauling it from a creek. That is physical labor, which burns the calories you do not have. But the real killer is purification. You cannot simply drink from the river. Dysentery will kill the group faster than a bullet. You have to boil it. Boil. Let's apply the laws of thermodynamics to boiling 32 gallons of water. The sheer volume of wood required to bring that much mass to a rolling boil for 10 minutes is staggering. You are now running a forestry operation just to hydrate. You are chopping trees, splitting logs, and feeding a fire that has to burn hot and long. This creates a secondary feedback loop of death. To get the wood, you burn calories. To replace the calories, you need food. To cook the food, you need more wood. And the fire required to boil 32 gallons of water is not a small hidden candle. It is a bonfire. It creates a smoke column visible for miles. It creates a heat signature that screams civilization. You are trading stealth for hydration, and in a hostile environment, that is a fatal trade. And what happens when the filter breaks? What happens when the pot cracks? What happens when the creek dries up? The infrastructure required to support 30 people is fragile. When one component fails, the water source, the purification method, the transport vessel, the entire biological machinery of the group grinds to a halt. Solo, you need a canteen and a life straw. You can sip from a rock seep. You can boil a cup of water with a handful of twigs. You are hydrologically invisible. The group is a thirsty beast that cannot be sated without industrial-scale effort. And industrial-scale effort attracts attention. Speaking of attention, let's talk about the noise. The acoustics of the death trap. Silence is the loudest sound in the wild. When the grid goes down, the ambient hum of civilization, the traffic, the electronics, the HVAC systems, vanishes. The noise floor drops to zero. In this acoustic vacuum, sound does not just travel, it propagates with terrifying clarity. Physics dictates that sound waves attenuate over distance, but in cold, still air, the density allows high frequencies to travel specifically well. A group of 30 people is an acoustic anomaly. It is impossible for 30 humans to be silent. It goes against our evolutionary programming. We are social animals, we communicate, but let's analyze the decibel output of a quiet camp. 30 people breathing, 30 people shifting in their sleep, steps on dry leaves, zip ties opening, Velcro tearing, equipment clanking. Even if everyone whispers, the collective rustle creates a drone, a disturbance in the ambient noise floor that acts as a beacon. And they won't whisper. Arguments happen, laughter happens, a cough happens. Let's talk about the cough. One person with a dusty throat coughs. In a silent valley, that sharp percussive sound can travel over a mile. It is a dinner bell for raiders. It is a dinner bell for predators. The gray man theory suggests blending in, being unnoticeable. A group of 30 is a neon sign. You cannot hide the acoustic footprint of a village. And then there is the light discipline. A fire to cook for 30 people, or boil that massive amount of water we discussed, is a lighthouse. At night, the human eye is drawn to contrast. A flicker of light against a black landscape is visible from miles away, depending on the terrain. You are broadcasting your location to everyone who wants what you have. And because you are a group, everyone assumes you have resources. Solo, you are a ghost. You eat cold rations. You sleep in a hole. You make no sound. You create no light. You are not worth the effort of hunting down because nobody knows you exist. The group is a target-rich environment. They are stationary, loud, and lit up. They are waiting to be raided. But the raiders might not even need to attack, because the group is likely already rotting from the inside out. The biological reactor, Exponential Contagion. Let's move from physics to microbiology. This is the part the movies skip because it is unglamorous and disgusting. A group of 30 people living in close proximity without modern plumbing is a biological time bomb. The math here is governed by the basic reproductive number, or R0, which measures how contagious an infectious disease is. In a survival situation, hygiene standards collapse instantly. There is no running water. There is no soap. There are no flush toilets. You have 30 people defecating, urinating, and sweating in a confined perimeter. The fecal-oral route of transmission is the primary vector. It takes microscopic amounts of fecal matter to contaminate a water source or a food bowl. One person fails to wash their hands properly after using the latrine, a latrine that is likely too close to the camp because people are afraid to walk far at night. That person touches the ladle in the communal soup pot. Thermodynamics and biology take over. The bacteria, perhaps E. coli or norovirus, enter the warm, nutrient-rich environment of the human gut. The incubation period is short. Within 24 hours, that one person is vomiting. Now apply the exponential growth of infection in a shared shelter. You are all breathing the same recycled air. You are sleeping shoulder to shoulder to conserve heat. The viral load in the air increases. If the R0 of a stomach bug in a sanitary city is 2, in a filth-ridden survival camp, it spikes to 5 or 10. One sick person becomes 5 in a day. 5 becomes 20 in 2 days. Suddenly you do not have a defense force. You have a ward of dying patients. Dysentery creates severe dehydration. Now, the water demand we discussed earlier doubles just as the workforce to get that water collapses. It is a death spiral. The smell alone, the scent of sickness, waste, and unwashed bodies, is a sensory trail that scavengers can track. Solo, your biome is your own. You do not import foreign pathogens. If you get sick, it is your own immune system versus the bug. You do not have 29 other vectors constantly reinfecting you. The group is a petri dish cultivating its own extinction, and if the bacteria don't get you, the psychology will. The psychological fracture, the Dunbar limit. The most dangerous variable in this equation is not the calorie, the virus, or the cold. It is the human mind. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed a cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships. But in high-stress survival, that number crashes. The safety in numbers. Myth relies on the assumption that everyone in the group is rational, altruistic, and stable. This is statistically impossible. In a random sampling of 30 people, the probability of including a sociopath, a narcissist, or someone with severe dependency issues approaches certainty. Let's look at the game theory of cooperation versus defection. In a world of abundance, cooperation is easy. In a world of scarcity, the prisoner's dilemma becomes your daily reality. Every individual is constantly calculating the value of the group versus the value of their own survival. As resources dwindle, the incentive to defect, to steal food, to hoard medicine, to abandon the weak, skyrockets. Trust is a resource just like water, and it depletes faster. You cannot sleep with both eyes closed when you are surrounded by 29 starving strangers. The cognitive load of monitoring 29 potential threats within your own perimeter burns glucose you cannot spare. Hierarchy inevitably forms, and with it, resentment. A leader emerges, often not the most competent, but the loudest or most aggressive. Factions form. The group splits into us versus them within the camp. The inner circle gets the extra rations. The outer circle gets the scraps. This is not conjecture. This is historical fact recorded in every famine and siege in human history. The bystander effect also paralyzes the group. Everyone assumes someone else is watching the perimeter. Everyone assumes someone else filtered the water. Responsibility is diluted until it is non-existent. In a solo or duo scenario, responsibility is absolute. If you do not purify the water, you die. The feedback loop is immediate. There is no politics, only consequence. The group insulates you from consequence until the moment the entire structure fails. Consider the crab bucket mentality. If you try to improve your situation, innovate, or suggest a hard truth, the group consensus often drags you down. Conformity becomes more important than survival. You spend energy managing egos rather than managing calories. You die of social friction. The group is a psychological pressure cooker with the safety valve welded shut. When it explodes, the violence is intimate and inescapable. You are trapped in a shelter with your enemies. But even if you manage the minds, you cannot manage the movement. The mobility trap, the inertia of the herd. Survival is often about movement. You must move away from threats, move toward resources, move out of the weather. Physics dictates that the energy required to move an object is proportional to its mass. A group of 30 is a massive, sluggish organism with terrible inertia. The speed of the group is determined by its slowest member. You have the elderly, the injured, the children. To keep the group together, the strong must slow down to the pace of the weak. This means you cannot outrun a weather front. You cannot outmaneuver a hostile force. You are a sitting duck. Try to coordinate a stealth movement with 30 people. It is impossible. The ODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, is the cycle of reaction time in combat. A solo survivor has a nearly instantaneous OODA loop. You see a threat, you hide. Split second. A group has a massive lag time. The scout sees a threat. He signals the leader. The leader processes the info. The leader shouts orders. 30 people react in 30 different ways. Some freeze, some run, some argue. By the time the group decides to act, the threat is already upon them. The group's reaction time is measured in minutes, while the solo survivors is measured in milliseconds. And the tracks. Oh, the tracks. A single person moving tactically leaves a disturbance pattern that requires a skilled tracker to follow. 30 people leave a highway. They trample vegetation, they churn up mud, they break branches. A blind man could track a group of 30. You cannot evade pursuit when you are bulldozing a path through the wilderness. You are tethered to the terrain, heavy, slow, and obvious. If resources in your area run out, and they will, the migration to a new zone is a logistical operation that exposes you to maximum danger for maximum duration. You are a convoy, and convoys get ambushed. The solo and duo protocol, the ghost alternative. So, what is the answer? If the crowd is a suicide pact, is the answer total isolation? Not necessarily, but the number must be ruthlessly small. The math favors the number 1, or at most, the number 2. This is the ghost protocol. Let's look at the thermodynamics of the solo survivor. You can construct a debris shelter that is essentially a body-shaped cocoon. The volume of air you need to heat is minimal. Your body heat alone can raise the internal temperature of a small, well-insulated burrow by 20 or 30 degrees. You cannot do that with a barn or a large tent needed for 30 people. The square cube law works in your favor here. You minimize surface area to retain heat. You require less food, which means less hunting, which means less energy expenditure. It is a virtuous cycle of conservation. However, the psychological strain of total isolation is real. This is why the number 2 is the strategic optimum. A duo allows for a watch cycle. Human beings have circadian rhythms. We need sleep to function. A solo survivor is vulnerable for 8 hours a day. A pair can shift sleep 4 hours on, 4 hours off. You always have eyes open. 2 people can carry a wounded partner. 30 people cannot be carried by the group without slowing everyone to death. Trust in a duo is binary. You either trust them with your life, or you don't. There is no gray area, no politics, no factions. It is a symbiotic bond. The caloric load of 2 people is sustainable on small game, rabbits, squirrels, fish, that can be caught with passive traps, saving you the energy of active hunting. You move fast. You communicate with hand signals. You leave no trace. You are not a resource drain. You are part of the ecosystem. But be warned, even a duo has risks. If your partner dies, you must have the mental fortitude to revert to solo immediately. You cannot mourn into inaction. The firelight of the group is that grief can be shared. In reality, grief in a group spreads like the virus, lowering morale and causing fatal mistakes. Alone or in a pair, you process, you adapt, you move. You are a shark in the water, streamlined, efficient, and lethal if necessary. The group is a beached whale, bloated, rotting, and attracting every scavenger for miles. The myth of rebuilding. People cling to the idea of large groups because they want to rebuild society. They want the comfort of the old world. But you cannot rebuild the roof while the foundation is on fire. The first phase of any collapse is a chaotic filter. It wipes out the inefficient, the loud, the dependent, and the unlucky. Groups try to skip the survival phase and jump straight to the rebuilding phase. That is hubris. And nature punishes hubris with extinction. You must survive the filter first. That takes months, maybe years. During this time, the large groups will devour themselves. They will burn through their resources, turn on each other, and scatter. The safety in numbers fallacy is a holdover from a world with supply chains, laws, and antibiotics. In a world without those, numbers are just a multiplier for misery. When you see that campfire in the distance, do not feel envy. Do not feel the pull of companionship. Feel pity. You are looking at a tragedy in progress. You are looking at people who are already dead. They just haven't fallen over yet. They are bargaining with physics, and physics does not negotiate. They are betting against probability, and the house always wins. Conclusion: embrace the silence. The next time you watch a movie where the hero saves the group, remember, that is fiction. In reality, the hero leaves the group, or the hero dies with them. The cold does not care about your need for conversation. The virus does not care about your democracy. The calorie does not care about your fairness. You have a choice. You can be a number in a statistic, a victim of the inevitable collapse of a desperate mob. You can have the illusion of safety for a week, followed by the reality of a slow, agonizing end, or you can accept the hard truth. You can embrace the silence. You can become small, fast, and efficient. You can learn to find comfort in the fact that nobody knows where you are. Survival is not about how many friends you have. It is about how much reality you can handle. The campfire is a lie. The crowd is a trap. The silence is your shield. Now, I want to know if you have the guts to admit the truth. Most people will comment that they need their tribe. They are admitting they are prey. But a few of you know exactly what I am talking about. You have a plan to go dark. You have a plan to disappear. Drop a comment below with your ghost number, the number of people you actually trust to keep you alive. Is it 1? Is it 0? Let's see who is actually ready to survive and who is just waiting to be fed to the fire. Next, I am going to teach you how to sleep on a sheet of ice without losing a single degree of body heat, because once you leave the group, the cold is the only enemy left. Stay frosty.